The morning sun cast long shadows across the Anderson family kitchen as Kate prepared breakfast for her husband William and their two teenage children, Emma and Jake. At 52, Kate had the kind of timeless beauty that came from contentment rather than cosmetics. Her auburn hair caught the light as she moved between the stove and counter, humming softly to herself. William sat at the breakfast table, scrolling through his phone while sipping coffee. After 25 years of marriage, their morning routine had become a comfortable dance of shared silence and small talk. The children would be down soon, rushing through breakfast before school, filling the house with their youthful energy. The Millers are having another barbecue this weekend, Kate mentioned, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. Sarah said the whole neighborhood is invited. William looked up from his phone, studying his wife's profile. Even after all these years, he sometimes caught himself marveling at how lucky he felt to have found her. Sounds good. I'll pick up some beer on Friday. Their life in suburban Connecticut was everything they had dreamed of when they first married. William had built a successful accounting firm, Kate worked part-time at the local library, and their children were thriving in school. From the outside, they appeared to be the perfect American family. But perfection, as Kate would soon discover, was often built on foundations of sand. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday afternoon in October. Kate was organizing old family documents in preparation for their tax filing when she came across a manila envelope she didn't recognize. Her name was written on the front in her mother's distinctive handwriting, along with a note, "For Kate, open only if you're ready to know the truth." Kate's mother, Margaret, had passed away 3 years earlier after a brief battle with cancer. In her final weeks, Margaret had seemed anxious about something, often starting conversations that she would then abruptly end. Kate had assumed it was the medication making her mother confused. Now, holding the mysterious envelope, Kate felt a chill run down her spine. She had been cleaning out her mother's belongings for years, but this envelope had been hidden behind old tax records in a box she rarely touched. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, laboratory results from a DNA testing company she had never heard of. The header read "Confidential Paternity Analysis" and was dated 30 years ago, just 2 years after Kate's marriage to William. The blood drained from Kate's face as she read the results. According to the document, there was a 99.9% probability that Robert Sullivan, a man she had never heard of, was the biological father of her daughter Emma, who was now 23 and living in Boston. Kate sank into her desk chair, the paper falling from nerveless fingers. This was impossible. Emma was William's daughter. She had to be. Kate had never been unfaithful to her husband, not even in thought. The idea was so foreign to her that she couldn't even process what she was reading. Her mind raced back 24 years to Emma's conception. She and William had been trying to have a baby for almost 2 years. They had been so happy when Kate finally became pregnant. The timing was perfect, the pregnancy was smooth, and Emma had been born healthy and beautiful. But, as Kate stared at the document, fragments of memory began to surface. She remembered her mother insisting on being present at Emma's birth. Margaret had seemed unusually interested in the baby's appearance, making comments about Emma's dark hair and brown eyes, features that neither Kate nor William possessed. Kate picked up the paper again, studying every detail. The sample had been collected from Emma when she was just 6 months old, during a routine doctor's visit. Her mother must have somehow arranged for the test without Kate's knowledge. The name Robert Sullivan meant nothing to Kate. She had never known anyone by that name, had never had any romantic involvement with anyone other than William since they started dating in college. The whole thing seemed like a cruel mistake or elaborate hoax. But, as she continued searching through the envelope, she found more documents. There were photographs of a man she didn't recognize, tall, dark-haired, with the same brown eyes that Emma had inherited. There was also a copy of a marriage certificate showing that her mother Margaret had been married to Robert Sullivan for 6 months in 1970, 2 years before Kate was born. The pieces of a puzzle Kate didn't know existed began falling into place. Her mother had always been vague about Kate's father, claiming he had died in a car accident when Kate was very young. Kate had accepted this explanation, having no reason to doubt her mother's word. But now it appeared that Margaret had been married to this Robert Sullivan during the time frame when Kate would have been conceived. The man Kate had believed was her father, the one whose grave she visited every year on his birthday, might not have been her biological father at all. More disturbing still was the implication of the DNA results. If Robert Sullivan was indeed Kate's biological father, and if the test results were correct about Emma's paternity, then Emma was not William's biological daughter. Kate felt the room spinning around her. Everything she thought she knew about her family, her history, her identity, was crumbling. She tried to make sense of the timeline, but the dates on the documents seemed to suggest something impossible, that somehow Robert Sullivan was connected to both her conception and Emma's. The sound of the front door opening made Kate jump. William was home from work earlier than usual. She quickly stuffed the documents back into the envelope and shoved it into her desk drawer. She needed time to process this information before deciding what to do. "Kate? You okay?" William's voice carried from the entryway. "Your car's in the driveway, but you didn't answer when I called." "I'm fine," Kate called back, surprised by how normal her voice sounded. "Just organizing some old paperwork." William appeared in the doorway of their home office, his face creased with concern. "You look pale. Are you feeling sick?" Kate forced a smile. "Just tired. Too much dust from all these old boxes." But William knew his wife too well to be fooled by her casual tone. He crossed the room and placed a gentle hand on her forehead. "No fever. But something's bothering you. I can tell." For a moment, Kate was tempted to tell him everything. They had built their marriage on honesty and trust. William deserved to know if Emma wasn't his biological daughter. But the implications were so staggering, so potentially devastating to their family, that Kate found herself hesitating. "It's nothing serious," she said finally. "Just some old documents from Mom's things that brought back memories." William studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Well, don't overdo it. These old family papers can wait." After he left, Kate sat alone in the silence of her office, staring at the drawer that contained the envelope. Part of her wanted to burn the documents and pretend she had never seen them. Their family was happy. Emma was thriving in her career, engaged to a wonderful man named David. Jake was doing well in his senior year of high school. Why risk destroying all of that for the sake of biological truth? But another part of Kate knew she couldn't ignore what she had discovered. If the DNA results were accurate, then Emma had a right to know about her biological heritage. There might be medical history that could be important for Emma's health and for any children she might have. More importantly, if Robert Sullivan was indeed Emma's biological father, then there were questions that demanded answers. How was it possible that Emma shared DNA with a man who had supposedly been Kate's mother's husband decades before Emma was born? Kate pulled out her laptop and began searching for information about Robert Sullivan. What she found made her blood run cold. Robert Sullivan had lived in their town 30 years ago. He had worked at the local hospital as a laboratory technician. And, according to his obituary from 1995, he had died unmarried and without children. Or so the obituary claimed. The more Kate researched, the more questions arose. Robert Sullivan's employment records showed that he had worked at the same hospital where Kate had received her fertility treatments when she was trying to conceive Emma. He had been part of the laboratory team that processed samples for the reproductive medicine department. Kate's hands began to shake as the implications became clear. Fertility clinics in the early 2000s weren't as strictly regulated as they were now. There had been cases of laboratory technicians using their own genetic material instead of the intended donor sperm, though such incidents were rare and often discovered years later. But if that was what had happened, it would explain everything. It would explain how Emma could be biologically related to a man Kate had never met. It would explain why her mother had secretly arranged for DNA testing. And it would explain the look of anxiety that had haunted Margaret's final days. Kate realized she was hyperventilating and forced herself to take slow, deep breaths. She needed to be sure before she said anything to William or Emma. The consequences of being wrong were almost as devastating as the consequences of being right. She picked up her phone and called the DNA testing company whose name was on the laboratory results. After being transferred several times, she finally reached someone who could access the old records. "I'm calling about a test that was performed 30 years ago," Kate explained. "I need to verify the results and understand how the samples were obtained." The technician was helpful but limited in what information she could share without proper authorization. However, she was able to confirm that the test had been legitimate and that the samples had been collected by a third party with proper documentation. The test was ordered by a Margaret Chen, the technician explained. That would be the same last name you had before marriage, according to our records. She provided samples from 2 individuals for paternity testing. Kate's maiden name was indeed Chen. So her mother had definitely been the one to arrange the testing. But Kate still didn't understand how or why Margaret had obtained Emma's DNA sample, or how she had gotten a sample from Robert Sullivan. Is there any way to contact the laboratory that processed the original samples? Kate asked. That particular lab was closed down in 2010, the technician replied. But the chain of custody documentation should still be available if you need it for legal purposes. Kate thanked the technician and hung up, feeling more confused than ever. She needed to find out more about Robert Sullivan's connection to her mother and to the hospital where Kate had received fertility treatments. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Kate found herself going through the motions of her normal routine, starting dinner, helping Jake with his homework when he got home from school, chatting with William about his day, all while her mind churned with questions and possibilities. That evening, after the family had gone to bed, Kate returned to her office and continued her research. She found old employee directories from the hospital and confirmed that Robert Sullivan had indeed worked in the reproductive medicine laboratory during the time when Kate was undergoing fertility treatments. She also found something else that made her stomach drop. In the hospital's archived newsletter from 2001, there was a small article about laboratory safety protocols. Robert Sullivan was quoted as saying that the hospital was implementing new security measures to prevent accidental sample contamination or substitution. The timing was too coincidental to ignore. Emma had been conceived in early 2001, just months after this article was published. If Robert Sullivan had been involved in some kind of sample substitution, he might have been trying to cover his tracks by advocating for better security measures. Kate printed out everything she had found and organized it in a folder. Tomorrow, she would need to make some difficult decisions about how to proceed. She could confront William with the evidence and let him decide what to do. She could contact Emma directly and ask her if she wanted to pursue additional DNA testing. Or she could try to find more information about Robert Sullivan and her mother's connection to him. As she prepared for bed, Kate caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. She looked older than she had that morning, as if the weight of her discovery was already aging her. The woman staring back at her was no longer the contented wife and mother who had made pancakes just 12 hours earlier. She was someone whose entire understanding of her family had been shattered by a manila envelope and a 30-year-old secret. William was already asleep when Kate slipped into bed beside him. She lay awake for hours, listening to his steady breathing and wondering how she was going to find the courage to tell him that their daughter might not be his biological child. And, more frightening still, she wondered what other secrets might be hidden in the documents her mother had left behind. If Margaret had kept this truth hidden for 30 years, what else might she have concealed? Kate closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but her mind kept returning to the same troubling questions. How had her mother discovered the truth about Emma's paternity? Why had she kept it secret for so long? And, most importantly, what was Kate supposed to do with this devastating knowledge? The answers, she realized, were buried somewhere in the past. And, tomorrow, she would have to start digging them up, no matter how much pain it might cause her family. The clock on her nightstand glowed 3:47 a.m. when Kate finally drifted off to sleep, her dreams filled with faces she didn't recognize and questions she couldn't answer. Kate woke up the next morning with a pounding headache and the hollow feeling that comes from too little sleep and too much worry. For a brief moment, she hoped that everything from the previous day had been a nightmare. But when she rolled over and saw William's peaceful face on the pillow beside her, reality came crashing back. She slipped out of bed quietly and went downstairs to make coffee. The kitchen felt different now, as if the very walls held secrets she was only beginning to understand. Every family photo on the refrigerator seemed to mock her with its display of happiness built on lies. William found her there an hour later, sitting at the kitchen table with cold coffee and red-rimmed eyes. "Kate, what's going on?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "You look like you haven't slept." She looked up at her husband of 25 years, this good man who had loved her and their children unconditionally, and felt her heart break a little more. How could she tell him that everything he believed about their family might be wrong? "I need to ask you something," she said quietly. "Do you remember anything unusual about my mother's behavior around the time Emma was born?" William frowned and poured himself coffee. "Unusual how?" She was excited about becoming a grandmother. "No, I mean specifically unusual. Did she ever seem secretive?" Or worried about something. William sat down across from her, studying her face. Kate, you're scaring me. What's this about? Kate took a deep breath. She had decided during her sleepless night that she couldn't handle this alone. William deserved to know what she had discovered, even if it destroyed their world. I found something yesterday in Mom's old papers, she said. Something that changes everything we thought we knew about our family. She retrieved the envelope from her office and placed it on the kitchen table between them. William's expression grew increasingly troubled as Kate explained what she had found: the DNA test results, the photographs of Robert Sullivan, the connection to the hospital where they had received fertility treatments. When she finished, William sat in stunned silence for several minutes. The color had drained from his face, and his hands trembled slightly as he picked up the DNA test results and read them for himself. This can't be right, he said finally. Emma is my daughter. I was there when she was conceived. I held Kate's hand during the entire procedure. I know, Kate whispered. I can't understand it either. But the dates match up, and Robert Sullivan worked in the lab that processed our samples. William stood up abruptly and began pacing the kitchen. So you're telling me that some lab technician used his own genetic material instead of the donor sperm we paid for? That Emma is the biological daughter of a man we never even met? I don't know for sure, Kate said. But it's the only explanation that makes sense. And your mother knew about this for 30 years and never told us? Kate nodded, feeling guilty even though she had done nothing wrong. The test was done when Emma was 6 months old. Mom must have suspected something and had it confirmed. William stopped pacing and turned to face his wife. Why would she keep this secret? Emma had a right to know about her biological heritage. We had a right to know that the fertility clinic had made a mistake. Maybe she was trying to protect us, Kate suggested. She knew how much we wanted children. Maybe she thought it would be better if we never found out. Better? William's voice rose. Better to live a lie for 30 years? Better to let me believe Emma was my biological daughter? Better to deny Emma the chance to know her real medical history? Kate flinched at the pain in her husband's voice. She had known this conversation would be difficult, but seeing William's anguish was almost unbearable. What do we do now? She asked. William slumped back into his chair. I don't know. I honestly don't know. They sat in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, William spoke again. We need more information before we make any decisions. This DNA test is 30 years old. Technology has improved a lot since then. Maybe there was a mistake. Kate felt a glimmer of hope. You think the results might be wrong? I think we need to be absolutely sure before we turn our family upside down, William said. If Emma really isn't my biological daughter, she deserves to know the truth. But if this is all some kind of mistake or misunderstanding, then we're worrying about nothing. Kate agreed, and they spent the rest of the morning researching DNA testing companies and fertility clinic regulations from the early 2000s. What they found was both reassuring and disturbing. The good news was that DNA testing had become much more accurate and reliable over the past 3 decades. A modern test would be able to confirm or disprove the results from 30 years ago with virtual certainty. The bad news was that there had indeed been several cases in the early 2000s of fertility clinic employees using their own genetic material instead of the intended donor sperm. Most of these cases had only been discovered years later, when children underwent DNA testing for medical or genealogical reasons. Look at this, William said, pointing to an article on his laptop screen. A lab technician in Virginia was convicted of using his own sperm in over 50 fertility procedures. The children didn't find out until they were adults. Kate read the article with growing horror. The technician had been able to substitute his own genetic material because of lax security protocols and insufficient oversight. Many of the affected families had sued the clinic, but the emotional damage couldn't be undone. If this is what happened to us, Kate said slowly, then we might not be the only ones. Robert Sullivan could have other biological children out there. The thought was overwhelming. Emma might have dozens of half-siblings she had never met. There could be an entire network of families who had been deceived in the same way. William closed his laptop and rubbed his temples. I think we need to talk to Emma before we go any further. She's an adult. She has the right to know what we've discovered and decide for herself how she wants to handle it. Kate felt a stab of fear. What if she hates us for not telling her sooner? What if she feels like we lied to her for her entire life? We didn't lie, William said firmly. We didn't know. And we're telling her now, as soon as we found out. That's all we can do. Kate knew he was right, but the thought of that conversation filled her with dread. Emma was getting married in 6 months. She was happy and settled in her life. This revelation could shatter her sense of identity and security. Maybe we should wait until after the wedding, Kate suggested. Let her have this happy time without worrying about family drama. William shook his head. If we wait, and she finds out later that we knew and didn't tell her, it will be even worse. We have to tell her now. They decided to drive to Boston that weekend to talk to Emma in person. A phone call or video chat didn't seem appropriate for news of this magnitude. Emma deserved to see their faces and understand how difficult this was for all of them. The rest of the week passed in a strange, suspended state. Kate and William went through the motions of their normal routines, but everything felt different. Kate found herself studying Emma's baby photos, looking for resemblances to Robert Sullivan that she had missed before. William seemed distant and preoccupied, struggling to process the possibility that his beloved daughter wasn't biologically his. Jake noticed the tension but attributed it to normal parental stress about Emma's upcoming wedding. He was too focused on his college applications and senior year activities to pay much attention to his parents' subdued moods. On Thursday evening, Kate called Emma to arrange the weekend visit. Of course you can come up, Emma said cheerfully. David's going to be out of town anyway, so we'll have the whole weekend to catch up. Is everything okay? You sound a little stressed. We just need to talk to you about something, Kate said, trying to keep her voice light. Nothing urgent, but it's better discussed in person. Okay, now you're making me nervous, Emma laughed. You're not getting divorced, are you? Because I really can't handle family drama right now with the wedding coming up. Kate felt her throat tighten. No, sweetheart. Dad and I are fine. We just have some family history information that we want to share with you. Family history? Like genealogy stuff? That's so random, Mom. But, okay, I'm curious now. After they hung up, Kate sat alone in her kitchen and cried. Emma sounded so young and carefree, so trusting that her parents would never bring anything but good news into her life. In 2 days, that innocence would be gone forever. Friday night, Kate and William made the 3-hour drive to Boston in near silence. They had rehearsed different ways to break the news to Emma, but nothing felt right. How do you tell your daughter that everything she thinks she knows about her parentage might be wrong? They arrived at Emma's apartment Saturday morning to find her bustling around the kitchen making breakfast. She looked beautiful and radiant, clearly happy in her life and excited about her future. Kate felt like she was about to destroy something precious and irreplaceable. You two look serious, Emma said, giving them both hugs. I hope this family history thing isn't bad news. Did we find out we're related to some infamous criminal or something? William and Kate exchanged glances. They had agreed that William would do most of the talking, since he was usually better at explaining complicated situations. Emma, honey, sit down, William said gently. We need to tell you about something your grandmother left behind when she passed away. Emma's smile faded as she saw the gravity in her parents' faces. Grandma Margaret? What kind of something? Kate pulled out the envelope and placed it on Emma's coffee table. She left some documents that raise questions about your biological parentage. Emma stared at the envelope without touching it. What do you mean, my biological parentage? William took a deep breath. There's a DNA test in there from when you were 6 months old. It indicates that I might not be your biological father. Emma's face went white. What? That's impossible. Of course you're my father. We thought so too, Kate said quietly. But the evidence suggests that there might have been a mistake at the fertility clinic where you were conceived. A lab technician named Robert Sullivan might have used his own genetic material instead of the donor sperm we requested. Emma picked up the envelope with shaking hands and pulled out the documents. She read them in silence, her expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and, finally, devastation. This Robert Sullivan, she said finally. Who is he? Is he still alive? He died in 1995, Kate replied. We don't know much about him yet. We wanted to talk to you before we did any more investigating. Emma set the papers down and looked at her parents. So you're telling me that my entire life has been based on a lie? That the man I call Dad isn't actually my father? Emma, listen to me, William said, reaching for her hands. Biology doesn't determine who your father is. I'm the one who held you when you were sick. I'm the one who taught you to ride a bike and helped you with your homework and walked you to school every day. I'm the one who's going to walk you down the aisle in 6 months. Nothing can change that. Emma's eyes filled with tears. But it does change things. It changes everything. My medical history, my identity, my entire sense of who I am. And what about David? What am I supposed to tell him? What am I supposed to tell our children someday? Kate felt her heart breaking as she watched her daughter struggle with this revelation. Sweetheart, we don't have to figure everything out right now. We can take more DNA tests to confirm these results. We can research Robert Sullivan's medical history. We can take this one step at a time. I need some time to process this, Emma said, standing up abruptly. I can't. I need to be alone right now. William and Kate looked at each other helplessly. They had expected Emma to be upset, but seeing their normally composed daughter falling apart was almost unbearable. Should we stay in town? Kate asked. We can get a hotel room and be here if you need us. Emma shook her head. I think I need space to think about this. Can we talk again in a few days? After I've had time to absorb what you've told me? Kate and William reluctantly agreed. They packed up the documents and prepared to leave, feeling like they were abandoning their daughter in her time of need. As they reached the door, Emma called out to them. Mom, Dad? I know this isn't your fault. And, Dad, what you said about biology not matching. I know you meant it, and I love you for that. I just need time to figure out how I feel about everything. The drive home was even quieter than the drive up had been. Kate stared out the window at the passing landscape, wondering if they had done the right thing by telling Emma the truth. She'll be okay, William said finally, as if reading her thoughts. She's strong, like her mother. She just needs time to process everything. Kate nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they had opened a door that could never be closed again. Whatever happened next, their family would never be the same. And, somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice wondered what other secrets her mother might have taken to the grave. 3 days after their difficult conversation with Emma, Kate received a phone call that changed everything. She was in her office at the library, trying to focus on cataloging new books, when her cell phone rang. Emma's name appeared on the screen. Mom, Emma's voice was steady but strained. I've been doing some research, and I need to ask you something important. Did Grandma Margaret ever mention anything about having other children? Kate's blood ran cold. Other children? No, never. Why would you ask that? Because I submitted my DNA to one of those genealogy websites, and I got some results that don't make sense. According to the system, I have 3 half-siblings that I've never heard of. Kate gripped the phone tighter. 3 half-siblings? Are you sure? The genetic markers are clear, Mom. I share significant DNA with 3 other people, 2 women and a man, all born between 1999 and 2003. And, get this, one of them lives right here in Boston. Kate felt dizzy. She sat down heavily in her chair, her mind racing. If Emma had 3 half-siblings born around the same time she was, it could only mean one thing: Robert Sullivan had been far more active in his deception than they had initially realized. Have you contacted any of them? Kate asked. I reached out to the one in Boston. Her name is Sarah Mitchell. She's 24, and she was also conceived through fertility treatments. She's been looking for answers about her biological father for years. Kate closed her eyes, trying to process this new information. What did she tell you? She said her parents went through the same fertility clinic we did, around the same time. She's been suspicious about her paternity for a while because she doesn't look like either of her parents, and she has some medical conditions that don't run in their family. Did she know about Robert Sullivan? No, but when I told her what we discovered, everything clicked into place for her. She's going to talk to her parents tonight and then, we're all going to meet tomorrow. Kate felt overwhelmed. What had started as their family's private crisis was rapidly expanding into something much larger. Emma, are you okay with all this? It's a lot to handle. Honestly, I'm not okay, Emma admitted. But, I'm also relieved to know I'm not the only one. Sarah seems really nice, and she's been dealing with these questions for longer than I have. It helps to know I'm not alone in this. After they hung up, Kate immediately called William at his office. We need to talk tonight, she said without preamble. Emma found 3 half-siblings through a genealogy website. William was quiet for a long moment. I'll be home early, he said finally. That evening, Kate and William sat at their kitchen table once again, but this time they were joined by Jake, who had overheard enough of their phone conversations to know something significant was happening. So let me get this straight, Jake said after they explained the situation. Emma might not be Dad's biological daughter, and now she has 3 half-siblings we've never met, all because some lab tech at a fertility clinic was using his own DNA instead of donor sperm? That's what it looks like, William said grimly. Jake shook his head in disbelief. This is like something out of a movie. How many other families could be affected by this? We don't know yet, Kate said. But Emma is meeting with one of her half-siblings tomorrow to compare notes. Are you going with her? Jake asked. Kate and William exchanged glances. They had discussed this earlier and decided that Emma needed to handle this part of the investigation herself. She was an adult, and this was ultimately her story to uncover. Emma wants to do this on her own first, Kate explained. She'll update us afterward. Jake nodded thoughtfully. You know, I should probably get tested too. Just to be sure. Kate's heart skipped a beat. In all their focus on Emma's situation, she hadn't even considered that Jake might not be William's biological son either. The thought of going through this nightmare twice was almost unbearable. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, William said, but Kate could see the worry in his eyes. The next day, Emma called from Boston with an update that left Kate speechless. She had met with Sarah Mitchell and compared their stories, and the similarities were disturbing. Sarah's parents used the same fertility clinic during the same time period, Emma reported. They specifically requested an anonymous donor with certain characteristics: tall, athletic, good health history. Sound familiar? Kate remembered their own donor selection process clearly. They had chosen their donor based on physical characteristics that would hopefully blend well with their own genetics, and a clean medical history. But here's the really creepy part, Mom. Sarah did some digging into the clinic's records. Her dad's a lawyer, so he has access to legal databases. The fertility clinic was shut down in 2005 following an investigation into several complaints about irregularities in their procedures. Kate felt sick. What kind of irregularities? Multiple families reported that their children didn't match the physical characteristics of their chosen donors. There were accusations of sample mix-ups and improper storage procedures. The clinic settled several lawsuits out of court and then closed permanently. Did anyone mention Robert Sullivan specifically? Not in the legal documents, but Sarah found something else. She contacted the other 2 people who showed up as our half-siblings. One of them, a guy named Marcus, said his mother had kept some old paperwork from her fertility treatments. Guess who signed off on the laboratory work for his conception? Kate's throat went dry. Robert Sullivan. Exactly. And Marcus said his mother remembered Sullivan specifically because he was very friendly and reassuring during a time when she was stressed about the fertility process. She thought he was just being kind, but now she's wondering if he was grooming her to trust him. Kate felt nauseated. The picture that was emerging was of a predator who had systematically abused his position to father children without the knowledge or consent of their parents. The violation was so profound that Kate could barely comprehend it. Emma, are you and Sarah planning to contact the authorities about this? We're thinking about it, but first we want to try to contact more potential half-siblings. If Robert Sullivan was doing this for several years, there could be dozens of us out there. After the call ended, Kate sat in her car in the library parking lot, trying to absorb everything Emma had told her. What had started as a family secret was turning into a criminal investigation involving multiple families and, potentially dozens of victims. That evening, William came home to find Kate researching everything she could find about fertility clinic scandals and the legal remedies available to affected families. The dining room table was covered with printouts of articles, legal documents, and genealogy charts. Any luck finding more information about Sullivan? He asked, sitting down beside her. Too much luck, Kate replied. She handed him an article she had printed from a medical journal. Look at this. It's a case study about fertility clinic fraud from 2003. The authors don't name Sullivan specifically, but the details match our situation perfectly. William read the article with growing alarm. According to this, the psychological impact on the families can be devastating. Children who discover they're not biologically related to their assumed father often experience identity crises and trust issues. Marriages can be destroyed when parents blame each other for not catching the deception earlier. And that's just the emotional damage, Kate said. There are also medical implications. If the biological father has